Welcome to this update on Defence's Capital and Estate Works pipeline in Queensland. Before I get started, I'd just like to share a little bit about DECNet, the market intelligence platform for the Defence estate community. We are just over 2 years old now, and our mission is to keep you informed. We're adding new features every month. There's already a blog and a monthly newsletter and an online directory covering every base and every infrastructure program. We've built this because I saw a need for this community to have a central source of truth. Over my 25 years in defence infrastructure, I've watched countless good businesses put their blood, sweat and tears into breaking into this sector, only to walk away due to the amount of effort required to win work. And I was frustrated because I knew that with the right knowledge, the rewards are there. So over the past few years, I've travelled across Australia, I've worked with businesses large and small, and I've seen a pattern. Yes, defence is a difficult client, but it's also a predictable one. And there's a recipe for success. So this presentation is part of a course that I've developed called Mastering Defence Infrastructure, which takes you through 5 common mistakes that businesses make when entering the defence sector and 5 equations to help avoid them, the formulas for success in the defence estate sector. The first mistake I see businesses make is what I call pipeline blindness, chasing opportunities instead of being ready for them. A quick story. So a few weeks after Defence released a major request for tender last year, I got a call from a business that was perfectly suited for what Defence wanted. They had the right capability, they were based in an underserviced region, and their project experience matched Defence's needs. But by the time they called me, it was just too late. They were starting from zero. They had no defence-focused case studies, no tailored project narratives, and no internal team or executive backing for the bid. Their senior exec asked me, well, can we still make a run for it? And I had to say no. You're on the back foot from day one. Because in this industry, you just can't build readiness on the fly. Defence tenders move fast, and the evaluation criteria is really specific. The businesses that succeed are those that start with a library of material, evidence, case studies, partnerships, all prepared well before the opportunity appears. So the first formula is simple. Opportunity equals foresight times readiness. Foresight is about keeping an eye on that pipeline, reading between the lines, anticipating shifts as they happen. And readiness is about having your team, your evidence, and your partnerships in place so you can act fast when the opportunity knocks. This presentation will focus on giving you pipeline visibility. We'll start with capital works and then we'll move into estate works and other opportunities later on. This presentation builds on the briefing from July presented by Defence's Security and Estate Group. I've added some more context and filled in some of the changes that have occurred since July. Having attended those briefings over the past few years, one thing I can say is that the July session felt different. There was a real sense of certainty. The pipeline just seems to be settling down now. Yes, we've seen a lot of fluctuation in the capital works program over the past few years. You've had DSR impacts, COVID and the cost escalations that occurred as a result, and elections earlier this year. But the tone in July was much more confident. Timelines announced in November the previous year were consistent in July. And that tells me that the market can finally start to plan ahead with some confidence. So where does Capital Facilities and Infrastructure Branch actually sit within the Security and Estate Group? Well, there really are 2 sides to Security and Estate Group. You've got capital works and new build projects and estate planning on one side, that's the infrastructure division. And then on the other side, there's service delivery division, which keeps the existing infrastructure running. Focusing on capital, facilities and infrastructure, Brigadier Quinn took over from Air Commodore Ron Tilley at the start of the year, and under him are two executive directors, East Rainey and Colonel Carl Reynolds. And they oversee delivery, and beneath them are 8 directors, and each has a team of project directors below them. All up, there are about 138 infrastructure projects currently in delivery across Australia. In last financial year, 20 new projects were approved by Parliament, adding a record $7.7 billion to the program. Now, if we look at Queensland, we can see two main groups of projects. The green ones are approved projects. They've already been through Parliamentary Works Committee, and the orange ones are still awaiting approval. They're grouped by site in this diagram, and as you can see, some of these projects extend well into the 2030s. Here's a list of upcoming project approvals. These are the ones heading into the Parliamentary Works Committee hearing in the next 12 months. So this is critical to note for long-term planning, because when construction funding gets unlocked, it's worth being on the front foot. So we've got 3 notable projects involving Queensland. The first one we've got is the Joint Counter-Improvised Explosive Device Project. This covers 3 sites, including 2 in Queensland, Laverack Barracks and Gallipoli Barracks, and that's about $20 to $25 million. Secondly, there's the Armoured Fighting Vehicle Facilities Program, Stage 3, which is across, again, Laverack and Gallipoli Barracks. And lastly, 2 separate items, both at Borneo Barracks in Queensland, and they're likely to be combined. Together they represent a steady rhythm of, I think, mid-sized projects moving into the pipeline in the future. Now, you might have heard of the Defence Infrastructure Panel. That's a group of companies that Defence uses to access a wide range of expertise. Now, the best known of these is the PMCA panel, which includes firms like GHD, ACOM and KBR, but there are also many specialist sub-panels as well. There's also a new development this year, the Major Construction Panel. That came online in 2025, and that's a really big shift. It covers projects worth over $200 million, and this allows Defence to work directly with a select group of major construction providers. Now, many of the usual players are there, but we're also seeing some newer entrants. For example, BMD, who's long been a subcontractor, but they're now stepping into a prime role. Importantly, this panel isn't national, it's regionalised, which means not all panellists are eligible to tender on all regions. Most notably for Queensland, CPB missed out on Queensland despite having a backlog of over $1 billion of projects in the state. So a big surprise there. Another important point is contracts. Security and Estate Group has its own evolved set of contract templates. These define how the sector operates. They're consistent and always available online. So they're a great resource for anyone trying to understand Defence's way of doing business. And a point to note is Defence is soon to be trialling 2 new forms of contract. One is a competitive ECI and the other is a guaranteed maximum price head contractor contract. Another change is the rise in Indigenous procurement. Defence often uses an exemption under the Commonwealth procurement guidelines that allows them to approach a limited group of tenderers instead of going to the open tender. This saves them time and supports policy objectives and just gets the work started sooner. Now, the key takeaway here is this. The Major Construction Panel, together with the increasing use of Indigenous procurement, is going to shorten procurement periods. Defence can now move to breaking ground sooner, but that also means less work is going to be appearing on AusTender. So for decades, AusTender has been the main source of market intelligence, but not anymore, because more and more of this work is going to be hidden behind panels and exemptions. Now, this means that visibility is essential. If your brand isn't visible to those on the panels, you'll be invisible to Defence. So understanding who Defence works with and how they award contracts has never been more important. So let's look at CFI's upcoming procurements. First, head contractor and medium works opportunities. These first two are open tenders, so they'll be appearing on AusTender. They're both ICT focused and high security builds coming in early in the new year. The first is the early works for the Information and Communication Technology Program, a national program worth about $40 to $55 million. It's spread across the country with a concentration in Queensland. So we'll see distributed ICT facilities at Laverack Barracks, a warfighting network application support facility at Gallipoli Barracks, and fixed node in communications infrastructure at various sites. So the ITR is expected in Q4 within the next 6 to 8 weeks. The next is the Borneo Barracks Facilities Project. So this is subject to parliamentary approval early in the new year. It's valued at between $35 and $45 million, and it will require a high-level security accreditation, because it includes the construction of a SCIF, a secure compartmentalized information facility. The PMCA is Oricon for this project. Next, we're going to look at the Indigenous opportunities. So firstly, this one is a $7 to $10 million project under Section 17 exemptions. So this is the Army Aviation Program of Works. It's a medium works project, so a faster delivery, smaller scale, but it's still in high security zones. So it's at Oki, which is part of that Aviation Program of Works, and this is scheduled for procurement in Q3. Next is the Field Fire Truck Capability Project, expected at RAF Amberley, and this is expected to be released before Christmas with Jacobs as the PMCA. We also have an airfield minor maintenance and inspection regime project. So the next phase of a 10-year program previously delivered by Fulton Hogan. Defence plans to appoint 4 contractors across 4 different regional areas, and the RFT will happen in the new year, and it's going to cover 28 different sites. Then the Counter Improvised Explosive Device Program, or LAND 154. This is another one to watch. So Jacobs again is a PMCA, and it covers Queensland and the Northern Territory. So Laverack and Gallipoli Barracks in Queensland, and then Robertson in Darwin. It has $8 to $12 million budget, and 1 head contract is going to be appointed across all 3 sites. And the last of the Indigenous capital works projects is Borneo Barracks redevelopment. So larger scale this time, $13 to $23 million, and it's focused on in-ground services supporting the new space control facilities. So this one needs firms with, again, experience working under ASD security protocols. So moving on now to major works. These are 2 of the biggest defence infrastructure programs on the horizon, and they're still. First up is the ICT main works under Joint Project 9111 Phase 1. So this is a massive nationwide upgrade following the earlier works package. The main tender is expected in 2026 and will go to the DIPMC panel. It's a managing contractor contract, which means opportunities for both designers and builders. It includes works not only across Australia, but also the Cocos and Keeling Islands, as well as RAF Butterworth in Malaysia. The second major work flagged in July is Land 8710, the Littoral Manoeuvre Facilities. The PMCA tender was run last year, and GHD was successful after completing the 5% design. So now they're developing the procurement plan, and Defence hasn't decided whether to go with a head contract or several, or managing contractors, or maybe a mix. But we know there are 3 locations in the scope, each with brigade level facilities, which means the works are in the billions of dollars. There's no active tender yet, but the market sounding is underway. So now let's talk about design services contracts. And I have 3 really interesting design opportunities coming to Queensland. The first is general ranges and training area redevelopments. So the tender went out, actually closed last month, so it's now under evaluation. But what this will do will be flesh out the plans for major upgrades to field training areas and live firing ranges in Townsville, Wide Bay and Tully in Queensland, as well as sites around the country. The second one is the National Maritime Infrastructure Maintenance Program. So KBR is the PMCA, and they're currently in the market for a design services contractor. So the ITR closed in August, and we expect to have a request for tender come out in the new year. So this involves upgrades to minor wharves and marine structures all across the country. And the third is really the biggest design tender I've ever seen. It's $60 to $80 million in design work. And the ITR has already closed, and a shortlist will follow early in the new year with the RFT. It's called the Guided Weapons and Explosive Ordnance Storage and Distribution Program. So there's facilities all across the country, including Mount Stewart and Townsville Field Training Area. So think earth-covered, hardened structures. These are critical national assets. And finally, a quick word on PFAS remediation. There's now a dedicated branch under Infrastructure Division for this, and they're handling environmental remediation projects nationwide. The Queensland site of interest in 2026 is RAF Amberley. About 1,000 cubic metres of soil needs to be treated, and the RFT is expected in 2026. So let's take a look now at what Service Delivery Division has in store for us. Why do we bother with the smaller opportunities? Well, because pipeline stability really matters. The mix of major and minor works really will keep your team busy. If you only chase big projects, you'll have long gaps between contracts. So that's why it's important to look at the smaller scale estate works projects to maintain business continuity. So when we talk about Service Delivery Division, the main thing we think about is the Estate Works program, which they run. And most of the work expected over the next few months in Queensland will be managed by JLL, but they'll be soon handing over these projects to the incoming Defence-Based Services contractors. But for now, Brian Chamber is the JLL contact for now. So small scale projects include road refurbishments, building upgrades, and some utility works. Some of the larger projects include full scale building refurbishments and in-ground infrastructure works. So there is a real changing of the guard happening right now. The new PDS panel structure comes into effect from the 1st of February 2026. So JLL, who is one of the 2 PDS service providers for the past 10 years, they'll be transitioning into a program level role, while Cushman & Wakefield, who have held this responsibility for the past decade, they'll be stepping back. So 2 new firms have been appointed. Oricon stays on, as we know, but 2 new firms in Mott MacDonald and APP. So all 3 of these companies have strong defence pedigrees. Oricon in particular is deeply familiar with the Estate Works program, but Mott MacDonald and APP, who are the newer players in this specific space, they bring a lot of defence experience from CFI work that they've been doing over the years. So road shows are expected to resume in 2026. We can assume May or June. Now, base services contractors. The former EMOS panel has been split into two. You've now got property and asset services, as well as living and working services, which handles that soft facilities management. Downer has been now awarded the property and asset services contract for Queensland and New South Wales. So they're taking over from BGIS in New South Wales, whereas in terms of living and working services, Compass Group will transition in from the 1st of Feb. So we can expect more industry engagement in the new year as these transitions settle. So if you're a small business, this is where the next wave of subcontracting opportunities will come in Queensland. So these changes are all part of the base services transformation. It's a huge procurement that's been rolling out over a number of years. And this, together with, I think, the major construction panel, reflects a broader pattern. Defence, as I said, is diversifying its delivery partners. So that's good for the market. It opens up opportunities for subconsultants, regional firms, and specialist service providers to align themselves early. When we pull all this together, the major construction panel, the Indigenous procurement pathways, and the upcoming design tenders and base services transitions, we see a really clear picture emerging. Defence is moving faster, working with fewer visible tenders and expecting higher readiness from the industry. That's why visibility matters, and that's why relationships matter. It's all part of the same formula that I mentioned earlier. Opportunity equals foresight times readiness. If your business can demonstrate foresight, understanding what's coming up, and readiness, having the team, the evidence, and the systems in place, then you'll be ready and well positioned for what's ahead. So whether you're a designer, a builder, a consultant, or a supplier, your success depends on preparation. Don't wait for the tenders to appear. Anticipate, align, and be ready to act. And that's what mastering defence infrastructure is all about. Equipping businesses like yours to understand the system and forecast where it's heading and take advantage of it. So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. I know your schedules are full and your teams are busy delivering across the country. If there's one message I want you to take home, it's this. Defence infrastructure is complex, but it's not impenetrable. It rewards persistence, preparation, and professionalism. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing many of you again, perhaps at the next Mastering Defence Infrastructure course or out on a defence base sometime in 2026.